a 15-point advantage that Trump had over Biden in March. Now, VP Harris gave a major speech today outlining her plan to make the economy grow and to make it better for middle class Americans. And Marcellus Williams, who spent more than 2 decades on Missouri's death row, convicted of a 1998 murder that he says he did not commit, died by lethal injection last night after a lengthy and complex effort to exonerate him based on DNA testing issues. Williams was pronounced dead at the Potosi Correctional Center in Mineral Point, Missouri. Now, this is after the U.S. Supreme Court declined to stay Williams's execution. The court's 3 liberal members disagreed and said that they would have granted the request to halt the execution. And a federal judge yesterday granted prosecutors' request to file an up to 180-page legal brief this week, arguing why Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election should not be immune from criminal prosecution, that is, rejecting the former president's claim that its timing was unfair or politically motivated with the election fast approaching. U.S. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan agreed with Special Counsel Jack Smith's office, which argued that the extra-long briefing was necessary because the Supreme Court's July ruling on presidential immunity required her as a trial judge to decide what allegations and evidence against Trump could be admissible. And Vice President Harris has been a magnet for Hollywood's elite, attracting dozens of major celebrity endorsements that bring with them massive followings, which in turn can bring more enthusiasm and even contributions to her campaign, helping to juice the Democratic base with Election Day just over a month away. And according to a Harvard University study, celebrity endorsements matter. The study says celebrity involvement is helpful in getting out the vote and encouraging voter participation. Well, you remember conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. Well, his InfoWars media platform and its assets will be sold off piece by piece in auctions that will help to pay more than $1 billion that he owes to relatives of victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. Now, this is under an order expected to be approved by a federal judge. This U.S. bankruptcy judge in Houston said during a hearing yesterday that he will approve the auctions that start in November. And the leader of a Haitian nonprofit community group filed criminal charges yesterday against former President Donald Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance of Ohio, over false claims that they made about Haitian immigrants eating local pets in Springfield, Ohio. The co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance filed the charges on behalf of the group. And President Biden was on The View today, and he delivered a pretty blunt assessment of the character of Donald Trump, telling the host of The View on ABC that there is not a lot of redeeming value to former President Trump. When asked if he would have won if he stayed in the presidential race, Joe Biden replied, absolutely. He said, yes, I was confident I would have beat Trump. He went on to call him a loser. Biden said, though, he was at peace with his decision not to run again. And he also made an enthusiastic pitch for Vice President Kamala Harris. He said she is smart as hell, number one, he said. He added that she's tough, she's honorable, and the thing he likes most about her is, he said, we share an optimistic view of the future. And Representative AOC of New York today called for Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, to resign. She said that the flood of resignations from his office and the vacancies are threatening the government of the city of New York. She says the government can't function. She says nonstop investigations make it impossible to recruit and to retain a qualified administration. And that stopgap spending bill was passed today in the House. So they being Congress averted a government shutdown just ahead of the November elections, putting a bigger funding fight to the end of the year. And Speaker Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, had to turn yet again to Democrats to supply the bulk of the votes to keep the federal funding flowing through December 20th. That's because conservatives in his own party, his own conference, said they would not support the legislation because it did not provide for sufficient spending cuts. They said that was one of the issues that was mandatory for their support. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I am joined by Professor Andrew Carl. He is a professor at the University of Virginia. He's also the author of a very important book called The Black Tax. Also joining me in this hour is veteran strategist, political strategist, that is, Ed Sanders. Glad to have both of these gentlemen back with me to help me break down today's trending news. And in hour two, you know what we do? That's that hour where we go a little deeper, where we dig behind those headlines and bring you the stories that people are talking about. Well, in hour two, I'm going to be talking to a reporter from Politico. She has a scoop on some environmental groups, particularly groups in California, who are withholding their endorsement of Kamala Harris. Now, you would think, as the choices go, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, who's better on the economy, seems like it would be a no-brainer. Well, there are some climate justice groups who are withholding their endorsement of the vice president. We're going to talk to this reporter about what she has learned from these groups and what might it take for them to have a change of heart. Also, you've been, I'm sure many of you have seen the story about Janet Jackson and her statement that she thought Kamala Harris was white, or she thought she wasn't black, and she thought her father was white. Instant and pretty aggressive backlash on social media towards Janet Jackson after she made that statement during an interview to the BBC as she was promoting her European tour. Professor Andre Brock, our resident social media expert, is going to join us also in hour two to help us make sense of how it is that someone at Janet Jackson's level, with all of the handlers and all of the people in her camp, could be repeating talking points, disinformation, outright lies regarding this election and regarding the vice president and presidential candidate Kamala Harris. I'm going to talk about how significant it is when you have an influencer, someone with the following and the stature of a Janet Jackson repeating that kind of information. What impact might it have as we're getting so very close to election day? So make sure you stick around for hour two. But before I bring on my guests, here's what I'm thinking about in real time. I don't know what's going on with police acting just out of control, police who are out of control. Yesterday, we did the story about the officers on trial in Memphis, the federal criminal trial involving 3 officers, those 3 out of 5 officers who were caught on video tape, body cam, brutally beating Tyree Nichols. 2 of those former officers pled guilty, one facing up to 40 years in prison, one facing 15 years. And now 3 of them fighting for their lives, literally trying to make the claim that somehow Tyree Nichols was at fault for the beating that we all witnessed with our very eyes. See, these stories about police brutality, they got a lot of media attention in the 1920s, not 1920s, in the 2020 during the pandemic. And even before that, we saw a lot of those stories get national media attention. Well, they haven't gotten so much attention lately. We talked about why with Sharon Reed yesterday. She's an Emmy Award-winning journalist who has been inside a lot of newsrooms over her illustrious career. And she told us that, quite frankly, when you have a case like Tyree Nichols, black on black officers who beat a black victim, that oftentimes newsrooms choose not to carry those stories in the same way that they carry other stories, particularly when the victim is not black or when the officers are not black. Unfortunate, but the reality of the news world that we live in. And there's another story that, again, has gotten pretty, I would say, almost no attention in the media, but again, is a story of a police officer who engaged in some horrific conduct that I would imagine had this been 2019, 2020, even 2021, we might have heard more about this story. Well, I, as a civil rights lawyer, I'm drawn to these stories because it just amazes me that given how many times we've now seen police officers actually charged for using excessive force, for violating the constitutional rights of individuals that they stop at a traffic stop or who somehow they become engaged with, that we continue to see this conduct again and again and again. And I can remember a time when it was very, very difficult to even get a indictment or prosecution of a police officer. The blue wall of silence prevented other officers from coming forth and testifying against their fellow officers. And there was a reluctance, even amongst district attorneys, to file charges against police officers. Well, there's been a seismic shift, and we are seeing more and more police officers who engage in bad conduct being held accountable. So when I saw this story today about this Houston police officer who was convicted today of murder, yes, murder, not of one person, but of two people. He killed a couple, this Houston police officer in 2019, again, at the height of the time period when these stories were getting a lot of national attention. This police officer killed two people and their dog. Yes, their pet, during a 2019 drug raid. And beyond killing these two people, this trial revealed systemic corruption within the police department narcotics union. Again, this is a Houston, Texas police department, their narcotics unit. This officer that worked in narcotics for this police department, his name is Gerald Goings. He was found guilty of 2 counts of murder in the January 2019 deaths of Dennis Tuttle and his wife. The couple, along with their dog, as I said, were fatally shot after this officer just, burst into their home using what we saw in Breonna Taylor's case, a no-knock warrant that didn't require them to announce themselves before entering. So he just busts into their home and gets into some kind of altercation with this couple. I don't know how he gets into an altercation with the dog, but he ends up shooting and killing the man, his wife, and their dog. During this trial, prosecutors presented testimony and evidence that shows that this officer lied. He lied to get a search warrant to falsely portray this couple as dangerous drug dealers. Now, during the closing arguments of this trial, the prosecutor said that this officer's actions led him to this couple's home, resulted in this violent confrontation in which they were killed. 4 other officers at the scene were shot and wounded. So this mayhem created all because this officer lied to get a search warrant to go into this couple's home. His lawyer had to acknowledge during the trial that his client lied to get the search warrant. He tried to minimize it by saying that the false statements that he made weren't that serious. He did acknowledge that the actions didn't merit, well, he tried to argue that somehow what this officer didn't merit a murder conviction and that he had been overcharged. He portrayed this couple as some kind of armed, dangerous drug users and dealers and tried to put them or make them responsible for their own deaths. And thankfully, the jury saw right through this argument and convicted this officer of double murder. He faces life in prison. When he is sentenced by the same jury will be involved in his sentencing. And we see this happening in this Memphis trial with the officers involving Tyree Nichols, while they are trying to paint Tyree Nichols as somehow being responsible for his own murder. These cases just, they are shocking to the conscience that we have police officers whose jobs are to protect and serve, who are engaged in this kind of corrupt, violent conduct, fatal conduct. And it obviously is not isolated to any one police department. There are police departments around this country, which is why I will segue into the importance of this election, because this trial of this Houston officer revealed systemic corruption in this police department, the kind of corruption that the Department of Justice under Joe Biden has been going after. And we know when Donald Trump was in office, he shut down the civil rights division practically of the Department of Justice, that division that went after these police departments to hold them accountable. So as you're thinking about who you're voting for in this election, remember, under Kamala Harris, she will have a strong attorney general, a strong Department of Justice that will continue to investigate and weed out corruption in police departments like Houston, like Memphis, and hold these officers and their entire departments accountable. Remember, elections do matter. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today.
Whoa, it's you, the Capital One Bank guy.
That's what they call me.
Mind if I get a selfie?
Yeah, sure thing. Say no fees or minimums on your Capital One checking account.
Wow, that's a keeper. So, where are you heading?
I'm off to spread the good news that Capital One helps people keep more money in their wallet with no overdraft fees.
Oh, you're the best Capital One Bank guy.
Hey, mind if I get a selfie?
Sure.
Say, Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
When you're rolling Charmin, ultra soft on the potty. Less is more, so roll it back, everybody. Charmin's irresistibly soft and hella nice. The grip is always soft. It's our party vibe. Every booty wanna touch the sky.
Charmin Ultra Soft is irresistibly soft and more absorbent, so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king. Climate is king. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back. All right, Ed Sanders, first question for you. Vice President Kamala Harris wants voters to know that she is not a socialist. That was clear, and that was an unspoken theme today in the 40-minute economic policy speech that she gave in Pittsburgh. And it's why during this 40-minute speech, she paraphrased Warren Buffett. She cited a survey of top economists and praised entrepreneurs in language that echoed Republican Senator Mitt Romney's presidential run a dozen years earlier. VP Harris embraced capitalism and called herself a pragmatist who would not govern by ideology. Talk to us about this speech and why it was important for Kamala Harris to make this speech and who is she actually targeting when she talks about being a pragmatist and embracing capitalism.
The American people, but certainly she's trying to answer the question on who's best to manage the American economy, right? And I think what we've seen in polling, what we've seen amongst the electorate is, this concern over how the economy is going. Inflation it sits at sort of the forefront of any family who's making decisions about how to vote this November. Couple things. I think one, she's trying to fight this narrative that the Republicans are putting on her that she's this radical left liberal, right? And what she's really saying is that she's actually far more moderate than what you're hearing from the Republicans. And to that point, she's trying to convince Wall Street, she's trying to convince business that under her administration, you're not going to see, I think some of the proposals that might come from some of the most left-leaning side of the party really come out of where she is presidentially. And that's important. I think when you start to see Wall Street, when you start to see business accept her as a potential president, obviously the financial support that they give to the campaign, but that's here nor there. It really is about how the American people are starting to perceive her and her ability to help reduce inflation and costs for everyday families.
Well, Professor Carl, during this speech, she said, and I quote, "Look, I am a capitalist," quote. Is this dangerous because of her progressive Democratic base who want to see her call out villains of the economy, those they believe are villains of the economy, like big corporations?
Yeah, well, clearly she's not speaking to voters like me, but, I don't represent necessarily the type of voters that she needs to lock in right now. And I think, as Ed sort of put it, I think really she is trying to sort of reassure a segment of the voters, and especially, Wall Street and other sort of constituents, to assure them that she is a safe choice and is going to be a good steward of the economy. With the assumption here that, she has a lot of her, left base locked in, and that's her concern really right now is to pivot toward the middle and to try to pick off what remains of any undecided voters. So I think, this is not the type of speech aimed to, drum up enthusiasm amongst her base, but it's very strategic. And, I think given her moves so far, it seems to be a pretty politically savvy one.
Yeah, Ed, do you have any concerns about the base, that progressive base, those voters who, get nervous when people start proudly saying they are capitalists because, that word is loaded. It can be triggering for a lot of people. Alex Jones, I guess he would be in that category. And, he's got he owes $1 billion in a judgment. So you think about all these people that profited in a negative way off of, in his case, peddling lies. And, there's so many capitalists that obviously we could go down a list of them. But, you think the use of that word and embracing it so, in such a full-throated way, does that create some issues for that base?
In a sense, yes. I mean, look, it's a two-person race at this point, and that base is either going to support her or stay home. I don't think use of the term capitalist is going to force anyone to stay home. I do think there are going to be some issues between her and Elizabeth Warren, and I've kind of looked to how Elizabeth Warren reacts to these sorts of statements. And, I remember a couple of weeks ago, not related to the speech today, but, Elizabeth Warren said, look, this is between Trump and Kamala Harris. She's the better choice. Is someone like Elizabeth Warren, who is, who I think you would point to as sort of the most progressive on financial matters. Is she going to get everything that she wants policy-wise out of a Harris administration? I don't think so, but she's comfortable and really supportive of Harris for the presidency. And that is sort of the biggest point. The term capitalist, look, we're playing with loaded terms back and forth across social media on everything. tomorrow Trump is going to call her a communist, right? And so, if she's saying she's a capitalist, the American people are really trying to decipher and understand, what does that mean for me? Are the banks going to be strong? Am I going to be able to get a loan? And if people are actually listening to what she's saying, the thought of what $50,000 credit to start new business should be really enticing to people. And if I hear capitalist and I hear that proposal, I'm actually rather excited about it for what it means for the country.
Well, it really shows what a difference this election is, how big the difference in this election versus the ones when you had Hillary Clinton and you had Bernie Sanders, where the progressive base were, they were adamant. I remember folks on television saying that we should have some law, rule, et cetera, in this country where people can't make more than $200,000. I think Trump and the prospect of a Trump presidency is even causing those, the most progressive of the Democratic base to say, look, we'll deal with capitalism, we'll deal with big corporations, we'll deal with a whole lot of things that don't necessarily line up the way, we would like for them to line up economically, as long as we all come together to defeat Donald Trump. He has been so horrible, and the prospect of a second Trump administration, I think, has made for interesting bedfellows. Even you and I, Ed, because I think you and I would go back and forth on some of these issues. So I think both of us have come to the agreement that there is one enemy, and we all know who that enemy is. So very interesting to see. And Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders himself, AOC, all full-throated endorsements of Kamala Harris, embracing her in the most significant way that you could expect in this campaign. When we come forward, the judge in one of Trump's many lawsuits is saying, okay, special counsel, file a 180-page legal brief. What impact might it have before this election for the special counsel to lay out in great detail what Donald Trump did to try to overturn the 2020 election? That and more when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
Right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is defying calls to resign as the FBI investigates his 2021 mayoral campaign finances. If the Black mayor is indicted, he does not have to leave his position. However, Governor Kathy Hochul has the ability to remove him from office. Another option for removing Mayor Adams is a so-called inability committee that would form a panel of the entire city council, and 2/3 of its members would have to agree to remove him. Once the mayor is out of office, public advocate Jumaane Williams would become acting mayor and announce a date for a special election for mayor. Maryland Governor Wes Moore is meeting with the King of Jordan today. Moore, who is Black, is hosting King Abdullah II at the State House in Annapolis. The visit comes after Abdullah addressed the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Moore says Abdullah's visit is the first ever official visit from a foreign head of state to the Maryland State House. The two are participating in a roundtable discussion with business and higher education officials. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Drive carefully and hit the brakes over in Sun Valley as an accident on the right shoulder involving a hit and run on the 5 North after Branford Street. Right now, there's slowing building up from Tuxford. In Diamond Bar, 2-car accident on the 60 West at Grand Avenue remains on the right shoulder, and heavy traffic continues from the 57 Orange Freeway. Drive carefully and expect heavy delays in Elysian Park with a 15-minute backup from Western Avenue as CHP is on scene as an accident remains on the right shoulder, the 5 south before the 2 Glendale Freeway. Also, Boyle Heights, 5 North after 4th Street, a 15-minute backup runs heavy from Calzona, Indiana Street interchange as an accident is on the right shoulder.
Bank of America has powerful digital solutions for local and global businesses, so you can make every move matter. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. Bank of America N.A. Copyright 2024.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The time may have come for people to change the status of Clippers forward Kawhi Leonard from one of the NBA's top stars to damaged goods. It may sound harsh, but here we are again. When the Clippers announced Tuesday that Kawhi's right knee still has inflammation and that he will not be able to practice next week in training camp, a lot of people are coming to the conclusion that Kawhi is no longer a healthy player. There are concerns he won't be ready for the season opener on October 23rd. Kawhi was sent home from Vegas in July after 3 days of working out with the U.S. Olympic team and that was 3 months after the Clippers season had ended. Kawhi missed the final 8 games of the regular season and the last 3 games in the first round of the playoffs against Dallas. From 2017 to 2023, Kawhi missed 242 games, mainly because of his knee. How much longer will Clippers fans support a part-time player? No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black. Keep following the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Have you heard of the 50-30-20 rule? This can help you spend and save your money wisely. So how does it work? Distribute your dollars into 3 buckets. 50% towards needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% goes to savings. Use this tool to help your journey to financial success. Sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, and domestic violence clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. With locations all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit lafla.org. lafla.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
We are back, and Ed Sanders is joining me, as well as Professor Andrew Carl. He is a professor at the University of Virginia and the author of an important book called The Black Tax. And in hour 2, we're going to be talking about the statement that Janet Jackson made about Kamala Harris and her father and her race, and also talking about some climate groups that say they're not ready to endorse Kamala Harris, even though it's pretty clear who will be better for the climate than... well, of the 2 candidates, which will be the best on issues of climate justice. So make sure you stick around for hour 2. Ed, I want to ask you about this 180-page brief that the special counsel wants to file. Of course, Donald Trump's team fought really hard to try to get this delayed, as they've been doing in all of his legal cases, trying to delay until after the election. But Judge Tanya Chutkan, federal district court judge in New York, said no, the special counsel could file before the November election this 180-page document laying out in great detail what evidence they have to support that Trump try to overturn the 2020 election and that he should not be immune from criminal prosecution. How dangerous might this document be? Obviously, we can imagine pieces of it being used in ads by Kamala Harris's team. But do you think it'll have any impact on this race?
I mean, impact on the race? No, I think ultimately, I think people are decided on, President Trump and how they feel about him relative to, election interference. I think, Judge Tanya Chutkan is taking a bold step, right, in reaction to the Supreme Court's ruling. And, I love it, first off, and I love the irony in it that she's of Jamaican descent. I think her father is Indo-Jamaican, and you draw the parallels to Vice President Harris. It must just keep Trump up at night that these Indian Jamaicans are beating him left and right. But the move is this. I think briefs are normally limited to about 45 pages, and Areva, you know better than I in that case. And so to allow the prosecution to go forward and 180 pages really allows them to spell out in clear detail what they see. And when that document goes public, it is a strategy that honestly, I think is just perfect. I think you have to lay out exactly what you feel. I've been critical of DOJ and justice really over the past 6 to 8 years. I don't think they have really truly pursued this case. This case is 4 years old, but going back to Russian interference in 2016, I don't think they've been transparent with the American people in the way that they should have. This is one step towards that. The focus of this case still remains solely with Trump. I really myself find it hard to believe that subordinates of Trump didn't play a role in this. And I question, where are the charges against those individuals if this is meaty, if this is real? There should be far more people under the weight of justice right now.
Yeah, you're right. Typically, briefs are not 180 pages, and we have to presume that special counsel has been working on this brief for a while because it's going to be filed before November 5th. And we're going to get to see the evidence that the Department of Justice has against Donald Trump. I agree with you that most people have already decided either that was a tourist event that happened, no harm, no foul, or it was one of the biggest breaches ever of our state capitol, and probably not going to change a lot of minds. But the more details that we learn, I think can help, obviously, with those folks that might have questions about what happened that day. And I just like having the facts, because when you talk to a lot of Trump supporters, one of the things they like to do is repeat those talking points, those factually wrong, those right out lies that Trump and his team tell repeatedly. There was a really great article today showing all of the things that now Donald Trump is taking credit for and lying during rallies and even press conferences. Things like $35 insulin, Professor Carl. He's now saying that Biden and Harris had nothing to do with that. That he is responsible for the capping of insulin. I mean, he is taking credit. The lowest Black unemployment rate. We know that happened in the current administration, Biden and Harris. He's taking credit for that. There's just a laundry list of things. And, if he says things loud enough and if he repeats them over and over again, people start to pick them up as if they are true. What do you make of this strategy? We've been seeing it all along, but boy, he seems to be Kamala says it on Monday. On Tuesday, he's repeating it as if it's something he's responsible for.
No, I mean, he's been lying from the moment he stepped onto the public stage. And I think, this is just, at the core of his strategy is just to spread lies long enough until people just give up and accept them. And I think, that's really, really was one of the powers of Kamala Harris, again, on the same stage with him at the debate, just calling him a liar to his face, telling the American public, like, everything that you're going to hear from him is, just going to be, absolute, fabrications. And so that is a very important sort of, it's part of his strategy, but it also sort of speaks to the, the sort of futility in a certain sense of trying to actually parse out like what's true and what's false, because it's all just misinformation, really.
Yeah, Joe Biden was feeling pretty confident today, and he was on The View, not in hiding, as Trump likes to say, not somewhere licking his wounds, as Trump likes to, talk about him as if he was cast out by the party and treated so poorly. He was pretty confidently saying, this guy's a loser. He has no redeeming qualities. I could have beat him. And then he did a perfect pivot to, this really enthusiastic endorsement of Kamala. What do you make of? Is this Joe's kind of, farewell swan tour where he's going to be out publicly looking happy and letting the American people know I have no regrets?
I'm really surprised that they have him doing public appearances like that. I think, one of the things that we most saw was that his inability to communicate clearly was holding down the electorate and the enthusiasm on the Democratic side of the ticket. And while I have respect for the president, I have not seen this appearance on The View, but I question having him deliver too many, particularly extemporaneous comments that he can stumble on. And it for him, for his legacy, great, I get it. But in the midst of this campaign, I don't know that he needs to do that now.
What do you think, Professor Carl? Do you think they need to, keep Joe on the low, keep him, hidden away in the White House, or should he be out talking and, saying things like Kamala Harris is smart as hell, she's tough, she's honorable, and, she shares an optimistic view in the future in the same way that I do?
Biden is a good retail politician, especially in the sort of states that she needs to win. I would like to see him more in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, the states that he flipped back from back into the blue column in 2020. I think that is one of the areas that was long a concern of Harris's strength as a national candidate were in the Midwest. And so I think there is still a lot of affection for Joe Biden amongst the American electorate. With the sort of pressure diminished now, he's not sort of running against Trump, so these verbal slip-ups don't have the consequences they did before. I think he should be out there. I mean, I think he actually has a lot to sort of run on. I mean, a lot to sort of speak to on his 4 years in office. I mean, this was a very consequential and highly successful 4 years given the circumstances. So I think there is, if he's willing to get out there, but I think it should be targeted toward those segments of the electorate where he really had a strength in 2020 that Harris really maybe is slightly weaker on, and so it's more time in Scranton, I guess, would be my sort of approach to this.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and I also think for a lot of those voters, let's face it, we still got a race and a gender issue here. We're talking about a Black woman being the first president of the United States. So I think the more that we can see an older white man that a lot of people still give a lot of deference to, continuously saying, people, it's okay. She can handle this. She got this. The world isn't going to fall apart if we have a Black woman as president. I think a lot of people need to hear that. They need to see that Joe Biden, someone who they have so much respect for, and in many ways think that he saved the country from Donald Trump 4 years ago. I think the more he can reassure those voters, many of those voters in the Rust Belt, in those battleground states, that she's okay, because it wasn't long ago, remember, where folks were saying, oh no, this country's not ready for a woman president. Oh no, this country's not ready for a Black woman. There's some of that sentiment, a lot more than we probably even talk about, that's out there. So I think it's brilliant. And I tend to agree with you, Professor Carl. He's not under the pressure. He can talk crap. He can call Donald Trump a loser. He can call him crazy, call him old. He can just be Uncle Joe, completely uninhibited. And I like these talking smack, saying, yeah, I want to beat that loser. I love it. So
he's out putting on red MAGA hats. He can't do that. He
was out there. He was clowning this guy who was trying to say,
but that, he's supposed to be better than that. So
I love that. No, that's Joe Ed showing that he is the president for everybody, including those MAGA voters. I think he showed that guy, you want me to be hostile and angry with you? I'm not hostile and angry with you. I can have fun with you. I think that we're going to see a lot of fun stuff coming out of Joe Biden. Well, I can tell you somebody's not having a lot of fun, and that's New York Mayor Eric Adams. He's under a lot of fire. He has elected officials in his own state calling for him to resign. This is the candidate that at one point was going to be the star of the Democratic Party, was going to be the model for how future Democratic candidates should run for mayor of big cities. And now he is embattled in what seems to be endless investigations, and now calls for him to step aside. When we come forward, more on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Oh, man. Looks like Bobby needs a ride to the airport again.
Grab the keys.
Who's taking Auntie and her friends to the swap meet?
Grab the keys.
How about we drop these boxes off at Miss Johnson?
Grab the keys.
Whether you're giving rides or hauling gear, you're all about getting things done. So do it all in a Chevy SUV. From the versatile Equinox and sporty Blazer to the roomy Traverse, our lineup of SUVs will carry you through every adventure. All you have to do is
grab the keys.
That's how we do. Head to your local Chevy dealer, where well-qualified buyers get 1.9% APR on all 2024 Silverado 1500, Blazer EV, Equinox, Trailblazer, and Colorado models. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
1.9% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment, 12.7%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 9/30/24.
Mark your calendar for October 2nd. It's California Clean Air Day. When you go Metro, you'll enjoy free rides and help clear the air. We can reduce pollution and create a healthier environment together. Let's all ride for a cleaner tomorrow. Start your journey at metro.net.
We're not just a thermometer recording and broadcasting popular opinion. We aim to be a thermostat, transforming the conversation about climate justice in our community. This is KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. Pro Football Hall of Famer and urban peace pioneer Jim Brown believed in just that. So he founded the Amera I Can Foundation for Social Change in 1988, focusing on at-risk and high-risk youth in underserved schools and juvenile detention facilities, as well as adult incarceration and reentry initiatives. The core of the Amera I Can program is its 15-chapter life skills curriculum. Mastery of these skills allows individuals to meet their academic potential, conform their behavior to acceptable societal standards, and improve the quality of their lives by equipping them with what they need to confidently and successfully contribute to society. Today, the foundation is led by its president, Monique Brown, who has been actively involved in the organization for more than 25 years. The Amera I Can Foundation continues its work in memory of its founder, actor, philanthropist, and NFL legend, Jim Brown. To get involved or make a donation, please visit AmeriICanCommunity.partners. That's AmeriICanCommunity.partners. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Ed, Mayor of New York City, Eric Adams at one point was thought to be a rising star in the Democratic Party. There was a lot of talk about how he had successfully won the mayoral election in the city of New York, how he brought together progressive Democrats and more moderate Democrats, as well as independents in that city to win the election. And this was going to be the new model forward. But now this mayor finds himself embroiled seemingly in daily controversies. Key members of his staff have been forced to resign, many under a criminal investigation. Many have had their homes raided. They've had their offices raided. And now you have a representative, U.S. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, a very powerful national figure as well as a very powerful figure in New York, saying that Eric Adams should resign as mayor. What do you make of how quickly this mayor went from the darling of the party to being someone who is an outcast in some sense?
Well, I don't know that I would have called him the darling. I remember, the night that election that he won. There were several African-American mayors across the city that took the helm of major cities, Karen Bass in Los Angeles, I think Chicago, Houston, all elected African-American mayors. And Adams, I thought, was the outlier of the group. He is not as progressive. He ran on that tough law and order sort of side of the equation. And so not quite in the mold, and I don't think the model for Democratic politics. Now, this is, I think what's interesting is you're seeing a number of different people in his administration now taking the hits. I think there was the deputy mayor that, that had her home raided, and we're seeing charges there. Damian Williams, a U.S. attorney in SDNY in the Southern District, New York, filed charges against those 2 fire chiefs last week. And I thought that was really notable. Again, Damian, another individual of Jamaican descent, in justice, and just to highlight that again. But the implication with those 2 chiefs is that they were taking bribes to move projects along, ostensibly this Turkish development. I don't know to what role that Eric Adams played in that. And a lot of this, from my vantage point, it looks like it's happening, absent him. Now, to Congresswoman or AOC's point, if it's happening on your watch, you're ultimately responsible for it. You've got to have the controls of everyone that's in your administration, so this isn't running rampant. I don't know that there's anything he's doing, but surely people in his administration are running rampant. And so, yeah, she may be right in making the call to have him step down.
Yeah, and I guess I wasn't suggesting that Eric Adams was, a poster boy for progressive politics, but if you recall, he was thought by some to be kind of the new, Democratic kind of prototype. He was a cop. He had the law enforcement background, but he had a lot of support amongst, civil rights organizations and others that would be considered more progressive. So it was this notion of, moving to the center in order to win a big city election, and some of the more progressive candidates that had not been able to do as well as candidates in that highly contested race. And darling may be a strong word, but I remember lots of talks about, the role he was going to play at the upcoming convention. And just, he's kind of a showman type mayor. So he has a lot of charisma, some folks would say. Professor Carl, are you surprised to see his administration? And you're right, Ed, he hasn't been charged with anything, but at least speaks to his judgment that he would have so many people in his administration like Donald Trump that find themselves ensnarled in criminal investigations. That doesn't speak well to his judgment in terms of who he picks.
Yeah, I mean, I never bought the argument that Eric Adams would be the future of the Democratic Party, if for no other reason that no mayor of New York City has ever been the future of anything. I mean, it's literally a career killer. No mayor of New York has ever held a higher office subsequent to being mayor of New York City. So that alone sort of speaks to the sort of way in which this office has been a springboard to nothing. And, he came out of a really messy primary. I mean, it was it was kind of an odd sort of coalition. I think the media jumped on the fact that here's a Black mayor who is kind of pro-police. Is this some way to knit together a new coalition? But I don't think there was any substance to that. And if you ever looked really at his campaign, I mean, he was a kind of an odd figure from the start. And I think, his administration has been nothing short of a disaster. So I think he will probably go the same way that every former previous mayor of that city has gone, with not much of a future in politics after this.
Yeah, I don't know how many days he has left, but it's not good when a very popular progressive congresswoman in your city starts talking about you resigning. Folks are just chomping at the bit. We know how politics is contact sports. So if people see a weakness or vulnerability, they will move in and move in quickly. Recent pictures with Sean Combs don't help either. Okay, thanks, Robert, for reminding us of he did ask for the keys to the city back, though. He did. He did last year, I think. And I think he did ask him, give me back that proclamation that I gave you last year. Another poor choice on his behalf. Before we get out of here, Mike Johnson, boy, this speaker, he's not going to go down, Ed, like his predecessor, but he keeps having to go to Hakeem Jeffries. Maybe he should just give the gavel over to Hakeem Jeffries.
Well, I think I'm hoping we take care of that in early November, and force the gavel to switch hands. Look, I mean, he took the job, and I imagine he took the job just so that his name would be in the history books. There's not much that you're going to see Mike Johnson accomplish. And to your point, when there's something that needs to actually get done, he is going to have to deliver the 2, 3, 4, 5 votes that he needs to Hakeem Jeffries in order to get votes passed. And that's just the state of where MAGA and that base has done to the Republican conference in the House.
Yeah, Professor Carl, I'll give you the last word on this. Doesn't seem to be any efforts on the part of the Republicans to change that. I mean, they continue to pick these extremist candidates, try to ram them down the throats of Americans that keep rejecting them in many cases, and no evidence that they are prepared to change.
I mean, this is really, in many ways, it was the worst scenario for Republicans in that they did win the House, but by such a narrow margin that the extremists were able to call the shots. And I mean, this speaks again to the fact that, Vice President Harris needs to win the House and Senate to be able to govern if she gets into office. So, I mean, every election, all these Senate and congressional elections are hugely consequential this November, not just to, because that will determine what kind of presidency she can have.
And California, which most folks don't think a whole lot about during national elections, we are a critical state for the flipping of the U.S. House. So voting in California has taken on increased significance, almost like battleground state voting. So it's really important that folks in California understand that we hold the key in some ways to some of the races involving the U.S. Congress that could cause Hakeem Jeffries to become the Speaker of the House and put Mike Johnson out of his misery, because it can't be fun to be the speaker, to come out with these bold proposals, with these extreme measures that are, being dictated to you by Donald Trump, only to have to capitulate and go to Hakeem Jeffries and to the Democrats to get anything accomplished. That has to be a real ego, deflator. And it must be pretty humiliating to be Mike Johnson today when you have to get permission from the Democrats to get anything done. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Professor Carl. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with both of you. When we come forward, we'll be talking about disinformation, outright lies, and why are celebrities like Janet Jackson repeating them. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Reba. Talk to you soon.